technology that often altered and displaced local practices. This legacy continues to affect and complicate the use of libraries and archival collections in the contemporary Pacific, a phenomenon that Hanlon started known as the chill of history. Next slide. The historic construct of the archive in the Pacific is a Western discipline, described by David Hanlon as a byproduct of the lingering chill of colonialism, brought in from afar. This chill has physical, intellectual, and political dimensions, eliciting emotion ranging from joy and sadness to disconcertment, pain, and even rage among Native scholars, encountering records that often describe their people in denigrating and demeaning ways in order to justify their colonial power. Archives characterized as a chill wind blown in from colder places, implicating them in the colonial enterprise and the development-oriented successor. As Vilsoni Harenko explained in his 1990 article, Representations of Pacific Islanders in Film and Video, Pacific Islanders merely provided colorful backgrounds in tropical settings, which to those who live in cold industrial countries are equivalent of Eden or paradise. Knowledge, once recorded, needed a place to be kept, while other modes of knowledge were often left to be forgotten. This process has led to a situation where knowledge recorded about Native peoples, often by outsiders and stored in these institutions, needs to be made accessible and culturally sensitive. In 2002, Evelyn Wareham of the International Council of Archives expanded on Hanlon's ideas. She argues that successful archival development depends on bending the imported system to meet local expectations and needs, rather than proposing a present preset belief system. This involves an intricate understanding of local culture, building community partnership with communities, and making records accessible, known, and relevant. So far, I think the work done in New Zealand, many of us will know in this regard, is well known in adopting Indigenous names, bilingual signage, recruiting Indigenous staff, and establishing specialist liaison positions. It is within this environment and vision that SEAPAVAA was founded and has worked to foster vital connections between Pacific audiovisual archives throughout the region. As you may have heard in the last session, SEAPAVAA was officially launched in Manila in February 1996. The idea for a regional federation among ASEAN countries, there were only 6 at the time, was first mooted in January 1993 at a conference organized by the late Alina Kapul of the Philippine Information Agency. This concept gained momentum 2 years later at the ASEAN Seminar on Film and Video Management held in Canberra from May to June 1995. A gathering co-funded by the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs, ASEAN Committee on Culture and Information, and the head of the Philippine Information Agency, Ernesto Ezleta. As Ray Edmondson told me, it was during this month-long gathering that people had time to develop a sense of community, people from far across vast distances, and decided to go ahead and set up a regional federation which would represent the interests of Southeast Asia and the Pacific. SEAPAVAA was created to specifically address the interests and of audiovisual archives in specifically that would never be top of the agenda for the existing dominating associations of the time, IAF, IFTA, IASA, and EMEA. Its establishment gave an identity to the region and its audiovisual heritage. Tunjai Sinthugnip, an executive from Thailand's Public Relations Department, served as SEAPAVAA's treasurer and was instrumental in organizing the 1995 workshop and drafting the Constitution. Next slide. From the outset, working within the Pacific cultural heritage landscape proved challenging. Yet with significant support from various outlets within primarily Australia and New Zealand, and knowledge and connections from established entities such as PARVICA, which is the Pacific Bureau of the ICA, Surveys, information gathering, and consultations were able to commence, which brought out a growing picture of the dire situation faced by audiovisual holding institutions in the Pacific. Most notable of these, up until 2010, occurred in Papua New Guinea. An extensive survey and analysis done by Ray Edmonton and Mick Newnham of the NFSA. This survey uncovered thousands, tens of thousands of vast swaths spread across multiple institutions within a vast, inaccessible jungle environment. Uncovering even another aspect of challenges in these countries, which Mick expounded upon in 2011. He writes, the other constraint for this trip was the issue of personal safety. Rascals or gangs are a major concern for locals and travelers alike. Rascals are such a problem that all collections we visited required significant security. Perimeter defenses of strong steel fences capped with razor wire were ubiquitous, and often armed security guards were present as well. The response to this security threat extended to the lengths I had not seen anywhere in the world. The need for rascal-proof construction. The ultimate expression of this is the construction of the walls of the workrooms at the vault of the National Film Institute in Ulinskas. The wall studs are placed half the normal spacing, and razor wire is built into the wall cavity to prevent rascals from breaking through the wall. Consequently, much of the organization's funding is spent on security rather than usual preservation activity. As I personally spoke with Ms. Chico Baru, who is now head of the Institute in 2020, this continued. However, the archive receives to this day no direct funding, they have no technical expertise or experience in preservation, archive management, fundraising, or policy writing. The collection is currently housed in a shipping container as a fire destroyed the main building in 1998, and thousands of original films were destroyed. Thankfully, support is on the way. The National Film and Sound Archive of Australia is working directly with them right now. So much of this focused in those early days, and still does, on bringing Pacific Islander archivists to events and procuring the funding to do so. This provides a vitally necessary opportunity for training engagement that would never be possible. Given the challenges seen in the Pacific region, travel and expenses especially, it really wouldn't be until 2011 to see SEAPAVAA host its first conference in Moriah, New Caledonia. One more time. Yeah. It was hosted in Moriah, New Caledonia by the Bibliothèque Bernheim and the Chibao Cultural Center. This enabled, for the first time, multiple Pacific institutions to come together in one place, and also allowed several of them to become SEAPAVAA members. The first time they would ever be able to be members of a professional organization in any form. And there were practical outcomes as well. No. As is Andrew in here? As members of Damn Smart, based in Australia at the time, and the National Archives of Fiji were able to complete one of the first large-scale digitization projects in the region. So throughout the 15 years, SEAPAVAA had continued to past 15 years, SEAPAVAA continued to provide multiple engagement opportunities, both for travel for Pacific archivists, as well as engagement across the sphere of potential specific topics and work that they would encounter. Although I'm not exactly sure when, SEAPAVAA wrote into its constitution that an event would be held in the Pacific once every 3 years. This is very challenging physically and financially, but we have managed to make it happen consistently. In 2016, And you can see the first one was in 2011 in Guam. It wasn't until 2016 that we were able to have the next, 2011 was in Moriah, and then 2016 in Guam. And then it would be again in 2019 that we would be able to have a conference again in New Caledonia. This shows the importance of having a stable regional partner that is able to actually be consistently stable. Yeah. Okay. So me in New Caledonia, you can see this one, we were able to bring archivists from the Marshall Islands, also from Palau, Kiribati, etc. Next slide. I'm going to kind of swing through real fast here. We were also able to start having events that focused on what is held in these archives. We held a program called AV Oceania in 2019, in which archivists were able to bring and have preserved their materials and then show them in an actual setting and display them, providing access that they never had access to before. And in 2018, I participated in the FIFO International Oceanic Documentary Film Festival, which was a eye-opening experience into a new world of Pacific practice, which is that majority of films up until recently have been made by outsiders, as I talked about before, but it wasn't until recently in the advent of digital technology that now there's a vast proliferation of Pacific indigenous filmmakers that are doing a lot of work. When I surveyed the 17 different countries that were represented at this film festival, how many of them had any form of archival strategy in place, the answer was 0. So this is only growing. It's a growing problem, not a growing in the digital sense. Probably one of the biggest things that SEAPAVAA has worked with was again with NFSA to conduct a Pacific audiovisual preservation needs analysis. This addressed a lot of different issues from many different countries and many different types of institutions, all holding audiovisual. For one thing, it showed the extremity of the issue. It initiated training and awareness, facilitated collaborative network, but the problem is that all of these initiatives and all of these events were one and done and unsustainable approaches. They were just snapshots at a moment in time. The dependency for all the recommendations made in these depended on future funding and stable programming. The ongoing concerted effort never really materialized. Identifying the problem, but not solving systemic issues that exist within these institutions, within these countries. And there was a lack of an existing infrastructure for training. It's easy to say, we know that nobody knows how to identify these types of films, but the follow-up is never quite there. And I think this is one of the problems with trainings and all throughout. It's getting better now, but in this situation, it's very difficult because it takes 5 years to get this started. And then after that, everybody's exhausted. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next one. Can flip through a few here. And from an organizational standpoint for SEAPAVAA, our internal challenges of working in the Pacific environment is also extremely difficult. Maintaining membership has been very difficult. We only have, as of today, we have 2 Pacific members. We've had upwards of 10 at various times, but maintaining a stable ability to pay a membership fee is not something that most Pacific institutions have as part of their budgets. Communication can be extremely difficult. I'm sure as many of you know, weeks can go between emails sometimes months. Things that were yes 3 months ago are definitely no the next time you talk. And these lacks of institutional instability, places that had ranged from one employee to at most Fiji with 14. The travel realities and extreme financial realities are nothing to joke about. It costs $10,000 to bring an archivist from Kiribati to New Caledonia, and that's within the Pacific. Get excited. I'm gonna wrap it up here. That's stuff. So, where does this all leave us? I'm proposing a much that what needs to happen is really, and this is nothing new, but a community-centered preservation model needs to be fully invested in. And this, I'm looking at it really from two different standpoints of it. One is addressing the climate emergency and fostering new partnerships. There have already been examples of for example, community archiving workshop. This is a fantastic initiative that has grown over the years and has become a really integral part. But I'm going to take a page out of another act in my act rack, which is a recent project we've been working on in Africa, which is building a community archives for social good initiative. And this creates different modules and learning pathways from all different swaths of the archival spectrum. I represent AV, of course, so it's a narrow part, but this goes to the things we hear about a lot, that train the trainers, that get the local people to do it, get local people to do things on their own. I think a model like this in the Pacific would have a lot of value, and I think we need to investigate ways for looking at this in a greater path. I wish I could expand upon it, but I'm already out of time. But one last thing is the final, last slide is that when it comes to disaster planning and disaster preparedness, it is not, I think, talking to everybody in this room, I think it's probably known that it's not a maybe thing anymore. We're working with, SEAPAVAA is working directly with our only Pacific member from Kiribati, where it is clear that if you've never heard or seen this country before, this is one of their 10,000 islands. The archives is located right here. That is not going to exist soon. And so the next stage of disaster planning and disaster response is for us to figure out a way to get it off the island. I have no idea how that's going to happen, but we'll make sure to keep you updated. But we're working with them to see what even is possible in this grant. So these are the realities of the Pacific. I'm just happy that I can represent SEAPAVAA, and we will continue to work in these environments to do the best we can. So thank you so much. Thanks
so much. Well, thanks everybody. I think we could just do one question if anybody's got something. If not, thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate it, and we'll bring on the next round. There's like a time slip. You on the map. Yeah. Yeah, sorry that no, that's how it is. I know how it goes. But that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
displacement, and how that history of resistance lies latent in archival collections today. Shay is a consultant, educator, and archivist. He's a Fulbright specialist working on community collections in the Balkans and a core member of Community Archive Workshop Collective. And Kailen Sallander is a Labiadh Media's research and development manager. She works on field building projects across Labiadh's art disciplines, including the Bay Area Film and Media Maker Survey and National Insights to Inform Bay Area Film Production Program. That bridge is you. You can all get started. Take it away.
All right. Hey, everyone. Can you all hear me? Am I close enough? Yeah, I'm scared to move it.
Just do it once. Just do it once.
All right. Better? Okay, cool. So like Morgan said, I'm Kailen. Excited to be talking to you all here today. I'm just going to briefly give a quick overview of the project and specifically Labiadh Media Preservation. Labiadh Media is a nearly 50-year-old nonprofit organization that serves the media arts community, primarily to nonfiction media makers of all ages. But then in 1994, we also founded a preservation department and have been a preservation and digitization partner to this field ever since. This project that we're talking about here today was supported by the U.S. National Endowment for the Humanities and was actually conceptualized by Morgan during his time at Labiadh. And the three of us have carried it through since then. And our main goal for this project was to develop a contemporary understanding of the challenges and changes in the magnetic media preservation field itself. Wait, switch slides on this one. All right, so this report, Mapping the Magnetic Media Landscape, was actually published on our website yesterday that you can find at that link up there. It is a long report that was also announced in Documentary Magazine. Earlier this year, they had actually covered some of the early findings from the report in a way that connected the findings to the difficulty that many nonfiction filmmakers face when trying to find and access archival audiovisual material. Big shout out to IDA and Documentary Magazine for covering this. I did want to note here as we get started that we'll have these slides available after the conference for you to check out. We're going to be kind of going through stuff and doing a quick overview. And we are trying to share this information as widely as possible. So later this year, we'll be at conferences like AMIA and the Australian Sound Recordings Association. So after this presentation, if you have a professional network or a regional association that you think would benefit from this information, please come up to us. We'd be excited to present it in more places and to share it more widely. All right. And then I will pass it to Moriah to talk about our data collection.
All right, can you hear me? So this report was about 2 years in the coming, more like 3, but we did about a year-long survey. We have 4 different data collection methods. The first was a national survey. This is a national, so it is US based. I know this is an international conference, but this is all about the United States, this report. We had 131 survey respondents. The purpose of the survey was to collect sort of hard data. From the survey respondents, we chose and allowed people to self-nominate themselves for interviews, and we conducted about 23 interviews. The purpose of the interviews was to take some of the data that had been collected through the survey and ask very specific questions so that we could have a more narrative data that supports the survey data. From that, we also, Kailen and Shay did 3 site visits. The site visits were meant to capture the breadth of the country, so very well spread, going from DC to the Gulf of Texas to here in Hawaii, all sort of regional in a sense, digitization efforts, very small grassroots effort with an organization in Texas. Here in Hawaii with Ulu, they did a site visit, which is a regional archival preservation effort. And then they visited the Smithsonian Institution. We're not going to explain the details of the findings of any of these things in this presentation. Our purpose here is to point you towards the report and where you can get that data. So this is really about how did we find the data? Who did we get the data from? Lastly, we realized after doing the survey and the interviews and the site visits that one voice that was really missing from our data collection was non-collecting organizations. Of the 131 survey respondents, only one was a non-collecting organization. And so we decided to interview some of the major preservation vendors in the country. And they provided a really great sort of bird's eye view as non-collecting organizations and had some really great insights, and we did 5 of those.
Yeah, and then just to provide an overall understanding of the group of organizations who responded to the survey, we have this slide here. And I did want to note that we had organizations respond from 42 US states and US territories. So we tried to reach as far as possible. Obviously, we could have reached them all, and that would have been amazing. But yeah, we were definitely focused on outreach in that way. You'll see here that most of our responding organizations were structured as nonprofit organizations. But within that, organizations definitely vastly differed in what their main description or purpose was. So you can see here they covered archives, cultural organizations, down to historical societies and government entities as well. And then here as well, we have kind of an overview of some of the main things we asked in this big survey. And you'll see here that none of the barriers are necessarily surprising. A lot of this report was trying to quantify stuff that we already know as a field and kind of take our collective knowledge and put, something concrete to it. So you'll see that in the main barriers section. But most notably here, analog AV collections were definitely still growing in terms of our survey responses. So 83% of respondents said that they were actively collecting analog AV. And to me, this really emphasizes how important addressing the collective challenges we've identified are, because this work is certainly enduring if 80% of folks are still collecting.
So this slide really addresses where investment in training would be most beneficial for the people who filled out the survey. And that's really in elevating skills around digitization and digital preservation. The graphic to the right feels a little bit out of place, but shows survey results in terms of what people reported the greatest physical threats to their collections are. And that actually leads quite well to the next slide, which is around disaster planning. Only 16% of the responding organizations to the survey have a disaster plan for their magnetic media collections. And one thing that didn't get captured in the survey, but seemed to rise a lot in the interviews, and it's not quite disaster, but that's really environmental concerns that emerge in the interviews, even though they don't fall strictly under the category of a disaster.
And then I did want to, in the interest of time, just call out one section of this slide here. And so this is this highlighted red bar. The thing to focus on here is that 89% of survey respondents indicated that their collections have material by or about historically marginalized communities. And we saw this again in the interviews as folks talked so much about the preservation of unique content that might not exist elsewhere or might have been lost to history without preservation efforts. And then the little blue box over here just highlights another potential area for training. We did note in the survey that 50% of respondents said that their staff did not have training in stewarding and describing culturally sensitive materials as well. Yeah, and then, oh, the slide is also me. I did want to, we're going to introduce one of our case studies next, but before we did that, I wanted to talk about how we describe organizational size in our report. So what we did here is we grouped our survey responses into 4 even categories by 3 variables that start to get at organizational size. So they are budget collection size for magnetic media specifically, and digitization rate on an annual basis. So you can check those out later. They're all in the report. But that's how this shook out from our data set that we collected.
Okay, great. Can you hear me as well? Okay. So we wanted to highlight one of our site visits, and that was here to Hawaii at Ulu, and Janelle is here, and is here. We have folks from Ulu here, of course, and we wanted to highlight this for a few reasons. First, because we are here in Hawaii. And also because Ulu offers a unique but relatable example of an organization with a large collection and high digitization rate. Also, because Ulu Ulu works to meet best practice standards and serve as a model for state preservation. The original goal of, and Janelle, if I misrepresent any any of your words, please let me know. But originally the goal was to digitize collections on site here, but because equipment is difficult to get and maintain on the island, Ulu Ulu is also outsourcing now large collections more often. So we just thought that was a really interesting case to highlight. And I also want to note, and we can go to the next slide, but I do want to note that that we have case studies like summaries that are in the report now, and we're going to be publishing really long case studies later for those of you who want to get into more detail about digitization workflows across the case studies. So did I hear a woohoo? I think I know who said that. All right, so Ulu Ulu is also a wonderful example of an archive that operates within an institution and on a large level, but works closely with local communities and has personal and real cultural ties to the community. So we love that. And I think that really wraps up what we can do here for Ulu. So thank you so much for your generosity. Okay. Oh, yes. And we'll also mention that while we were here, Kailen and I took the opportunity to follow some of Janelle's leads and some of the leads we had from Community Archiving Workshop, or actually through one of our partners at least, and speak with Hula Preservation Society, Kamehameha Schools, and here University of Hawaii at Moriah. So thank you all for helping us understand the landscape here.
So back to what the report contains. The report obviously contains a bunch of hard data that we've tried to illustrate with some narrative data that we have further illustrated with the case studies. One of the things that we want to point you to when you go to the report, which hopefully you all do, is that the report was not just focused on problems. I'm sorry. Sorry. Thank you, Morgan. Great facilitation. In many ways, I was like, within the field, am I like too close?
No, it's the connection. It's the back.
Okay. I'm also really good at projecting, if that's okay.
Yeah, you can just project.
Okay. My kids always tell me I'm too loud, so. So in many ways, we often felt like we're not telling anybody anything they don't already know, but it's really important to just do a check with so many people in the field and make sure what we think we all know is true and put it on paper and sort of timestamp it in this moment. Where are we? Have we made any progress? How much time do we have left? But I want to just point out that the report was not just about the problems, it's also about how organizations are meeting the challenges. And so the report really highlights the way collections caretakers are meeting their preservation needs through collaboration, networking, and actually a lot of technical ingenuity. And I'm not going to tell you like flat out what those things are. You got to go to the report. But I will say that some of the strategies that were shared with us that are reflected in the report include adapting workflows for particularly stubborn formats across the board. A lot of people were flagging the same formats as being particularly difficult. Because of this, they were pushing standards around things like baking times. Some of the baking times people are doing are crazy. Read the report, you'll find out. And also a lot of people have begun to do a lot of 3D printing and machining of parts themselves, that the equipment is just no longer available, or parts that are no longer being produced by manufacturers. One of the things that I want to point out is that this report is very US centric, it's US based, and we all know that in our resource landscape has shifted really dramatically since the Trump administration came into power and basically decimated our federal resources for cultural heritage preservation. So one of the things that we really want to push in the report and hope people use the report for is advocacy. Now more than ever, coordinated advocacy becomes one of our most important jobs as AV preservationists. And that means advocating for our AV heritage to our legislators. It means advocating to our administrators within our institutions, our organizations, to fund and support our programs. But it also really means making sure that the public understands that access to their own AV heritage is a right. And so advocacy is like really, there's a whole section on advocacy, but we see the tool of the report overall as an advocacy tool.
Okay, yes. Recommendations from the report. So continuing on this note of hopefulness and confidence in our colleagues and our community. We have recommendations from the report that we divided into 3 sections. Of course, we won't go through all of the recommendations that we have, but we thought we would highlight a couple to bring to you to the conference today. And I think from this section, which is collection stewards, maybe the toughest one for us is to recognize and respond to the reality that it's unlikely that all magnetic media will be preserved. So I know I said I was gonna enter this with hopefulness, but I think this speaks to our recommendation for strong preservation prioritization methods and workflows. Also, we're recommending strong tiered best practice standards so that we all feel a little more confident and clear about how to apply best practice standards in real world organizations with the resources we actually have. So there's a lot of like, let's move forward. Another recommendation I want to highlight from this section is that we digitization training in conjunction with training for digital file management is so important. You saw in the education section that training in digital collections, I believe, was the top request for education and training. So we are excited to see more opportunities moving forward to combine those trainings. Okay, last in this section on recommendations with field building, we saw success and a lot of interesting possibilities when large organizations work with community organizations and smaller organizations. This tends to be a really wonderful partnership, or at least have the potential to be so, because as we know, large organizations tend to be more less flexible and more stable, and smaller organizations tend to, not always, have flexibility and these direct real connections to culture and media makers. And so there are a lot of areas there where we're excited to see growth.
All right. That brings us to the end. We're back at our link to the full report, if we've convinced you to check it out. And then just links to BAVAC's stuff if you want to learn more about the organization, but you can also reach out to us individually as the authors of the report. So yeah.
Did we leave time for questions?
Yeah, we did actually.
We wanted to go fast enough to be like, we're just pointing at the report, but we want to have a conversation and see if people have questions.
Yeah, no.
How similar they are, how dissimilar they are. Maybe that's what was wrong.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. The case studies have more about the digitization workflow. The report, I think that would be a whole really amazing research study to do on its own.
But the case studies, people were very generous in sharing everything from how they make decisions about what to digitize to like which pieces of equipment, and how they prep tapes for digitization, and what sort of soft, like it's pretty granular. It's pretty great.
Yeah. And those longer length versions, as we said, are coming out very soon. So you'll see them on like the BAVAC socials, and they'll be on the website very soon as well.
And that's why it was important to get 3 very different kinds of organizations, from like the most grassroots to the largest, one of the largest, second to you probably, in the country in terms of AV preservation.
And did we mention our other 2 partners for the hosts?
No.
Okay, those are
Right.
Entree in Texas, which is worker owned, a worker owns, I suppose collective model, very grassroots, super hyper local, archive, education and training center, and then Smithsonian institution. So we have the whole gamut of all the decisions around digitization and prioritization and community engagement.
If you read the question right now, I'd like to ask, in your findings, you had mentioned taking a tiered approach to best practices and guidelines. I was curious if you could speak more to that specifically, especially in a world where we rely heavily on best practices that may not be sustainable if this model wasn't good.
I know, it's like kind of scary. It's not as bad as saying it at EMEA out loud.
I know, when I said that, I did sweat a little bit, but, I mean, also.
Like right now.
Also, no, I'm really glad you asked that because I think, I'm also curious what you all think about that or how you all make those decisions, because we saw a lot of folks really working to try to make these decisions, wanting to be best practices, but stalling their work. You know these stories. You stall your work because you don't feel ready to meet best practices. You don't want someone to come back later and say, you know, oh, this work was poorly done or incorrectly done. It's a struggle. But how to accomplish that, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe now where
I
we're
mean,
going.
we had a couple of very small organizations who did, and I think because the field of audiovisual preservation spent so much time following this moving target of what is the best practice, and then when it landed on something like 10-bit uncompressed video, a lot of the small organizations are just like, well, we can't do that. Like, we don't have the capacity. And why are we doing that with our VHS tapes anyhow? So a lot of people are like, well, maybe we will do, like, I'm not going to name formats on people, but smaller compressed formats. We are at a point where, like, the cliff is visible in how much time there is for people to do their digitization, and people can't afford to send things to vendors who are going to do things at best practice standards. They also don't have the equipment or the storage capacity, frankly, to store files at that. So people are making decisions that if they really want to save these cultural recordings for their communities, they're going to be digitizing compressed video, and they're gonna get through it, you know. And so that's where I think a conversation needs to happen about realistically what is manageable, what's the place in between not preserving your collections and meeting best practice standards. Each organization needs to figure out where they fall in that line in order to actually meet their preservation goals. And that means people need to have a different idea of what a preservation goal is, what that consists of. And hopefully this report gives a couple examples of the ways that people are doing that.
We just have one question online. They're asking if is it possible to know who or what institutions are 3D printing parts?
Yeah, it's actually in the report.
To see more.
To see more, can you give them a teaser or no?
A lot of the preservation vendors are, and the preservation vendors, actually one of them, and we can read it in the report, I believe it's Preserve South, is in a partnership with a manufacturer in the same building. And so they have the manufacturer tooling parts for their machines in the same building. And a lot of the things that came out of the conversation with the preservation vendors was the idea that there needs to nationally and then regionally be a more coordinated effort about where people's expertises lie, and maybe funnel resources and attention towards people's expertises so that some people can just be machining parts. Some people have the capacity to do some of the like VHS, compact audio, cassette tape preservation and crank through, and that will support their organizations. We interviewed quite a few regional, like grassroots preservation organizations who would actually, because a lot of people have lost their funding because of the NEH cuts and IMLS cuts and the NEA cuts, they would do well if people would choose them as their preservation vendor within their capacity instead of sending everything to like these other couple of preservation vendors. So it's like, it's almost like we need a directory of not like what every single format can you do, but what format can you do that nobody else can, right? People need to focus on sending things to them. And one of the things that came up is actually that not just digitization, but actually inventory and prioritization would do well to be streamlined because it's very hard for a vendor to have an organization be like, we have these 50 critical tapes. You know, like that, they have to like set up a new account, have somebody like administrate that. But if regionally people learned how to organize inventory and prioritize tapes and be like, okay, we as a collective group of organizations in this geographic region have 500 of this format, they'll get a better deal, you know, or maybe they can do some of it in-house. So it just feels like a lot of what comes out of the report is people need to sort of highlight where their best skill sets are and how applying what resources we have left can help support all of these different kinds of organizations and keep them alive and keep them doing their work, and also keep people being able to do things like machine parts for people. Another thing that came out of it is this idea of like a national network of training around video engineering and equipment maintenance and things like that. Not to keep saying all the things that are in the report that we
We're
said
supposed to say it.
This is QR codes right there. This is all of these.
It's a lot.
We're coming up on time, but we could field one more question if people aren't dying for lunch. The will for vendors to do that kind of thing, since they're technically competitive?
They're the number ones who offered it. They don't have the capacity. They know they don't have the capacity to digitize all of the magnetic media in this country.
Okay, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to our presenters for coming.
We'll just leave that up there.
Yeah.
While we have lunch.
You should have a picture. So they're very much
Under the
social.
QR
Yeah, or the.
Morgan,
or the
will
cover.
you take our picture for
Yeah.
the?
But Morgan should be in it.
Wait,
Oh,
wait,
yeah, you should be in it.
yeah, you,
Okay, well, let me get one of you.
wait, should we go back to the first
want us
slide?
to
or the
stand?
slide?
No, we have to have this slide up so that.
Yeah, go to
Okay,
the
okay.
first side for a picture. And then we'll get like Pamela or Janelle to take a picture.
All for the IG.
Yeah, actually.
Or do we look like we're like,
Do we look-
live giving the report? And then, blah, 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 blah.
Hello. So maybe now try playing the clip and see if it just works.
Sorry, we are spoiling it.
Oh, fabulous. But the room isn't hearing them.
The audio.
You have to turn on the podium, is what Robbie said.
Yeah, but I just also.
Yeah.
This is not good. Okay, this one comes right from here.
Should be good.
Does anyone know how to put on the volume?
Should be okay.
Here's the volume. Ah, okay.
We test it?
Sure.
Shall I put like the sound in here? Okay, sound is getting out of.
It's just the computer and not the room. Yes.
Sorry, anything?
The audio feed and the video doesn't really use a room. Speakers. shared in Zoom, but he can't do it.
I can't hear their audio, but I can hear speaking.
Oh, okay. Or maybe we can just put the audio from the computer, you know, not too loud. but-
Yeah, as long as,
I'm not sure if it'll pick up on the Zoom line.
could we put the microphone by your speaker?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, no, maybe not.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's really that whole.
I won't touch anything.
Yeah, we might have to have you come here
Oh.
instead to the presentation. Sorry. Okay. Sorry for the technical problems.
I'd rather you said they can go.
Okay, great. So. on. Right next to put in, so it won't be awkward. Oh, maybe that's fine. All right, we share through Zoom, John.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry about that, everyone. We'll go ahead and start this afternoon section. Thank you for joining us. My name is Yuri Shimoda. I am the Supervisor of Preservation Services at Warner Brothers. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's session. First up, we have Preserving UNESCO's Film Archives, a visual chronicle of science, culture, and environmental change. After each presentation, we'll have a Q&A session of about 7 to 10 minutes. If you could please hold all of your questions until that time, we would appreciate it. And I will go ahead and introduce our speakers for this presentation. Maya Labiadh is a Franco-Tunisian archivist trained in audiovisual archive preservation at INA, which is the French National Audiovisual Institute in Paris. Her expertise lies in understanding the technical, historical, and cultural significance of film and audiovisual materials. She has a particular interest in the audiovisual archives of the Global South and is dedicated to their conservation and recognition within the broader archival landscape. Currently, she works as an audiovisual archive consultant at UNESCO, contributing to a project focused on the preservation, accessibility, reconditioning, and promotion of historical audiovisual collections produced by the organization. Joining Maya is Laure Fletcher, a French audiovisual archivist who is passionate about the history of cinema. She spent 5 years studying film history in college, specializing in French New Wave cinema. This focus led her into the fields of archives. Initially, she worked with social work archives before pursuing a master's in audiovisual heritage, also at INA. During the program, she gained valuable practical experience by training in a photo library. Currently, Laure is a film archive consultant for UNESCO, contributing to their project dedicated to their preservation, reconditioning, digitization, and promotion of their film collection. Please give a warm welcome to Maya and Laure. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hello everyone, thank you Yuri for this introduction. We are very happy to talk about UNESCO's audiovisual archive collection. Just a quick reminder, UNESCO is a very big institution. We are here to talk about their archives. We think it represents well the theme of this year's conference, which is a loss of place. Since this thematic is rooted in UNESCO's missions,
science, culture, education, and their archives showcase this very well. So our presentation will be split into 3 parts. So firstly, we will talk about the Audiovisual Archives collection and the challenges that come with it. Secondly, we will talk about our work safeguarding the film archives. And then last but not least, we will talk about digitization and valorization of these archives. And of course, we'll end with a Q&A.
Share the screen from you.
Oh, sorry. Just have to share the screen for the people on Zoom.
Because they have to get out and then Zoom. Well, you guys are doing it without anything else. You guys are going out.
Yes.
There's an application window to do it.
Oh, perfect.
There we go. Let's go back into the presentation.
I don't want to share it.
See if that.
Okay. We'll just select it. So, just a quick reminder, you might, all of you already heard of UNESCO, but it's interesting to have a bit of historical context. So UNESCO was founded in 1945 in the aftermath of World War II. It's part of the UN, so it's a UN organization, and it was created with a powerful mission, which is to foster peace and security through international cooperation, intellectual international cooperation, like in education, science, culture, and communication. Originally, UNESCO was established by 20 countries, founding countries, and it has grown into a global organization with nowadays 194 member states. So together, these nations work to promote dialogue, understanding, and sustainable development, which is really important into UNESCO organization. So to shape its vision and action, member states gather every 2 years, more or less, during the general conferences, and they debate global challenges, vote key resolution. We talked about some of them this morning, but they also launch collaborative project that reflects UNESCO core values. So some of the most known mission and programs are the World Heritage Program, which preserve cultural and natural sites of global significance. Some of them are in Hawaii, for example. Hawaii is also part of the program. We found also the Memory of the World program, which is most focused on safeguarding documentary heritage, like manuscript and all kind of archive or important archival elements. But another program we wanted to talk about, and it's less known, is the Creative City Network. Maybe you have heard of, but it's a program that allows cities to connect, and they place creativity and at the heart of urban development. So the different cities in the network try to work together to put artistic elements in front of the world and the urban citizens. Another program also Laure wanted to talk about.
So another program that UNESCO is a part of was created in 2007 called Archives at Risk, which focuses on preserving archives. It is UNESCO and it is a cooperation between UNESCO and European Broadcast Union, World Broadcast Union, PIAT, and it highlighted the importance of the audiovisual conservation and preservation. All of these associations also collaborated in creating key shared knowledge on how to preserve audiovisual archives. So the main example is the SEAF and UNESCO recommendation, which was signed in 1995, the recommendation for the safeguarding and preservation of moving images. We also have the UNESCO and CCAAA collaboration, which was the creation of the World Day for Audiovisual Heritage, which we talked about this morning. It happens on October 27th each year. And so keep your eyes open for any exciting upcoming events. So now to talk about UNESCO's own audiovisual archives, we have this slide. So UNESCO began producing audiovisual content as early as the 50s. So shortly after it was created, they created audiovisual content because they recognized the power of image and sound in a means to reach global audiences. And much of this early material was created by the Office of Public Information, which is the former name. It was only officially transferred to the archives in 2015, so not too long ago, only 10 years ago. So this is a very new and exciting project of safeguarding their archives. And it now forms a unique historical collection that reflects the organization's first step in media outreach. So the sector firstly focused on recording sounds because it was more practical for the technicians that were all over the world to record sounds mainly. So that's the sonothèque and the phonothèque.
They also took some pictures or photographs. So the collection built a significant part on photo, which represent more or less 86 thousand negative, 55,000 prints, and we also have slides. And of course, in the 80s, since audiovisual technique evolved, a video came on, and UNESCO put also video efforts like records on video. So we count more or less 10,000 tapes from the 80s to the 20s. But today our mission, Laure and I, is more focused on the reel. So we estimate the collection at 16,000 reels. And that's what we will show you today, because this collection, as we said, was a bit forgotten, and it was only given to the archive in 2015. Sorry for the little mistake.
So this is UNESCO's Film Archive timeline. So we are set in 2025. This is a project funded by France and Monaco. We are here today thanks to them. And it was a safeguarding project. Before that, there was a digitization project which was funded by Japan. And then next up, we will have a project of digitization coming in 2026. As you can see, all the projects are funded by member states and other. We fully rely on fundings, and we don't have any regular spendings. So this is the film archives categories. So firstly, we have the reference film Cinematheque, which represents all the films that were given to UNESCO. It is only copies, and it is around 1,500 to 2,000 reels. Next up, we have the production Cinematheque, which is the main part of the collection. It represents around 10,000 to 12,000 reels. It is production elements, so negatives, interpositives, internegatives, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, we have the distribution Cinematheque, which is all the copies that were made based on the production elements and that were used to communicate all of UNESCO's projects around the world. So it is around 2,000 reels, and it has many language versions. So just a little disclaimer, all the graphs we will show you are based on 5,600 reels approximately, which are the reels that we have inventoried and reconditioned, and it does not represent the entire collection.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. So this is just a part of it, as Laure said. Most of the film we have are documentaries. So UNESCO want to show to the world what they worked on and how they financed different programs around the world. So most of them are documentaries, but we also find a bit of in UNESCO headquarter elements or functioning, like a visit of the general director, or also visit of important and diplomatic people in the headquarters in Paris. We found speeches of really important people like Mandela, for example, conferences, and some interviews also. Also, a big part of our collection is, if it's willing to work, is 60mm format, since the collection is most made of documentaries, and the documentaries was shown on TV broadcast. So a lot of broadcast channels around the world bought some documentaries from UNESCO to show them, and that's why 60mm was used. Also, this is the most important part of our collection now, because we, as Laure said, inventory the reference part and the distribution part. But since we are digging into another part of our cinematheque, maybe we will find more of other formats. We hope so. Or not. Yes.
So these films are mainly acetate based, so around, you can see, it's around 80% of the collection. We do have some polyester, and we recently found one nitrate film, which was not supposed to be there because all of the nitrate films were transferred to the National Cinematographic Center of France for safety reasons. So it was set apart and it will go away. So since we have mainly acetate-based films, we have the issue of Vinegar Syndrome. Well, the graph has a little issue, but what we wanted to show you was that around 30% of our collection has Vinegar Syndrome because of the acetate and degradation, which we will talk about. So Vinegar Syndrome is only one of our collection's challenges. We also have, because of incomplete and inaccurate metadata and insufficient data flow and transparency, we lose critical information about the films and about the past storage conditions and methods. So for example, all the films are stored in metal film cans, which have different colors. And we recently discovered that the colors actually mean something. They mean that, for example, yellow would be copies, orange would be magnetic tapes, etc. So the fact that we lose this information because no one wrote it down years ago, we lose time trying to figure out what all of this means. Also, we have unfit storage conditions. So we have the metal cans that I was telling you about. So these are examples of degrading films, or films that are stored together, which isn't good for airflow. We also have unfit storage conditions. So this graph isn't working as well, but this was to show you that the temperature control and humidity control isn't stable. So as you probably know, it isn't good for storage conditions, and it helps create the Vinegar Syndrome issue.
Yeah. And the real was kept in this room till the 50s. So yeah. So here's a small video of our work. So we, as Laure said, have to take care of our storage room. So we take care of the environmental monitoring. Every day we take out water from two dehumidificator. Then we do a detailed film inspection. We try to find out which film is in which reel, because sometimes the boxes have the wrong names on it, for example. We uncore them from the metal reels, crankcases. We recondition them, we redo a new labeling. So this is the different colors Laure talked about. We put them in polypropylene boxes, relabel every film. We complete inventory, catalog them. Of course, we do the Vinegar Syndrome test and also a risk assessment, so the ABIS strip, you might know. And then everything is made to prepare the digitization process. So we'll send them in a laboratory like outside of UNESCO. But we hope one day to, now we still do it, but just a few work with researcher, and we try to allow access services to access service for this researcher or any people like you might be interested in it. So yeah, next slide. So yeah, as Laure said, we started the digitalization process in 2019. So but we have only 182 films digitized from the collection. And since we are talking to you now, we just sent 73 of them who are currently being digitized. And in the future, you can see here, but we will have an on-site laboratory to digitize the wheel in UNESCO headquarters. So we are currently having a RFA process, you know, which laboratory will work with us.
And these are all examples of films that haven't been digitized yet.
Yes.
So
Some of them are figured.
So we want to show you two extracts that we chose because we think they are perfect for the conference because they show communities and sciences. So first of all, we have World Without End, which is one of UNESCO's famous film projects. It was directed by Basil Wright and Paul Rotha in 1953. This film highlights hardworking men and women learning how to grow food, how to live healthier lives, and how to share the UN's idea of progress and prosperity in a peaceful world. So please enjoy.
Just as for the minutes. Oh, so we don't have sound. Or we can turn up the volume.
Students belong to an organization called CREFAR.
So yeah,
CREFAR means
Yeah,
with the keyboard easier.
Yeah. Let's make sure you can just match.
so this is in this was shot there, and we have also rushes of this. So that's interesting.
here also is something which is, in its own way, like a revolution. The people in the launch are students who belong to an organization called CREFAR. CREFAR means the Fundamental Education Center in Latin America. It is supported by UNESCO and by the governments of 21 nations in the New World. Every day, this team of students goes to one of the islands in Lake Pátzcuaro. This one is where Faustino lives. It is an island where, since men first came to it, life has depended on the water of the lake and on the fishing nets that are the islanders' most valuable possessions.
So yeah, that's just an example. We wanted to show you also another film documentary also called The Green Heart. This one is set in Camargue in France, and they interviewed some scientific researchers that were working on the Camargue Reserve, natural reserve, and where only few cameras were allowed to go to shot on and see, for example, the birds and all the natural elements there. Now some people can go there, but it's more. And it was also a report made by Paul Brandry, so he was one of UNESCO cameraman director. So UNESCO had its own directors at the time. There's two names we always find.
Michel Baptiste, nous sommes en Camargue, en France.
Oui, nous sommes au cœur de la réserve zoologique et botanique de Camargue, dans le delta du Rhône, qui est elle-même au cœur d'une zone plus large, le parc régional de Camargue.
Ici, au bois d'Ariège, on pourrait dire que l'homme est plus rare que sur la Lune. Enfin, n'exagérons pas, car il y a tout de même quelques scientifiques qui y viennent de temps en temps. Et nous avons pu exceptionnellement planter les caméras de l'UNESCO au cœur du bois, grâce à l'autorisation d'Éric Poulet, directeur scientifique de la réserve.
Les caractéristiques générales de la flore et de la faune de la réserve de Camargue dépendent essentiellement de l'eau, du sel et du climat méditerranéen. La conjugaison de ces différents facteurs détermine l'existence d'une flore tout à fait exceptionnelle qu'il est important de protéger au maximum.
Préserver la faune et la flore, tel serait, semble-t-il, le premier objet des réserves qui existent un peu partout dans le monde et dont la Camargue n'est qu'un exemple parmi beaucoup d'autres, que ce soit en Afrique, en Amérique, en Asie, en Europe, en Océanie.
So we have both of them with them that are really interesting too. But not all of them are digitized.
Yeah. So the films that we presented were able to be digitized thanks to France and Monaco's funding. So next we have 3 objectives in mind. Oops. Sorry. So firstly, to finish the inventory. So we have about 10,000 reels that are estimated left to inventory and recondition. Nextly, we wish to digitize all UNESCO produced films, which represents roughly 600 titles. And then, of course, we want to open our collection worldwide so that the collection can live on and flourish. So please scan this QR code if you can, so that you can have access to our new viewing platform, which I will shortly introduce in right now. So this is our new platform. We have many other platforms that we can find our archives on, but we wish to have one that centralizes all of our audiovisual collection so that the access can be facilitated. So yeah, that's it was also just one of them. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we're our team. Of course, we're not the only one to work on this collection. Laure and Etienne that we left in Paris. But if you have any recommendations, since we are also really young archivists, we will be glad to hear from people that knows how to deal with such a collection. And also questions we will be glad to answer. And just a disclaimer, Etienne is our boss. So if you have very specific questions, please feel free to send him a message. He's waiting to hear all about it.
Thank you so much, Maya and Laura. We do have time for some questions if anyone has. I'll have the wonderful opportunity to go ahead and visit Maya when she was at the UNESCO archives last year. And I could say very plainly that I was really shocked at the positions that she was doing all of this amazing work in, and even to see the site, it makes me kind of emotional to see that you have the platform. My question is about funding, and UNESCO is such a behemoth organization. Typically, do member states come to the archives and say we would like to support a project? How many meals do you have pertaining to our specific area, or is it something that the archives kind of pursues and gets together? Okay, we have this many reels from Japan. Let's try and contact those officials.
So usually, whenever they give fundings, it's to help safeguard the entire collection. They don't really pinpoint which movies they want to save. but they are always interested in knowing which movies we have from their country, so we give them like a list of what we have for them, but they give it for the collection.
And usually we try to call every delegation diplomat and tell them, hey, do you want to come see our audiovisual archive? Look how terrible they are. Please help. Since, yeah, as Laure said, we don't have like a funding on a general, like a daily basis, I mean. So this is really programs, and from time to time, we have some money to digitize some of them. Also, the workflow is not always the same. So Japan, for example, had the Japanese project, funding project was constructed a bit differently from now. And so we are trying to find a workflow that will last forever, and also will be done with the same scanners, for example, with the same quality, because a few years ago it was done also on telecinema, some of the digitization, not a lot, but and the quality is terrible, so we have to redo everything again. So yeah, that's also a big challenge. Any other questions?
I do kind of want to put a call out to all of us as the members of this community to, if we have the opportunity, advocate for these archives as much as we can. You know, there's so many recordings of cultures that might not even exist anymore in these archives. So anything we can do, I think we need to step up and support, even if it's just writing a letter. This is what the website. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
One question, given the size of the collection, how did you choose where to start?
Answer.
So we have a list of priorities. So firstly, we can only digitize UNESCO produced films because we have the rights to them. And then we firstly only digitize the ones that haven't been digitized yet, but then we noticed that the digitization wasn't very good, so we scratched that priority. And we also have the priority of the quality of the reel. So if the reel is degrading quite quickly, then we will digitize it in priority.
But we also sometimes try to know which one would be the most interested, like have an historical interest, and also for example, countries that disappeared, like the Yugoslavian country, or I don't know, Haute-Volta, countries that no more exist but used to exist. So, for example, that are films we really want to digitize first, because it's culture that we don't often see on screen, and UNESCO used to have to be like a really, really important organization that can allow cameramen to go there and shot. They had a diplomatic power, I mean, which is now the case, but the test, yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.